Yes. Yeah. As soon as you said that, I had a little physical reaction to it. I mean, yeah. My initial thoughts are sure AI help us drive some efficiencies. It's going to also provide the really, really valuable immediate feedback that is really truly drives a lot of change and drives a lot of long term. And we're talking about schema development, like just breaking it down, like how we operate as humans. So it's going to help us learn from that learning standpoint. Where the cringing part comes from is, are we there yet with AI? Are we really to a point to where we can say it's robust enough to completely replace us as human coaches and mentors? I would say no right now, right? I think AI is an amazing tool that we can use as an asset to help support drive efficiencies and drive that immediate feedback piece. I think it doesn't replace that human interaction piece. There's going to be nuance to this. The AI is not going to be able to be as creative and innovative as we are as humans. So when it comes down to rethinking an approach or trying to come at it from a different angle, you're still going to need that human interaction there. Sure, the AI is going to help support you, but I think it's a trifecta now, which I'm making a four-way triangle as I'm saying that. I think you still have to have that human mentor coach as a part of that conversation to continue to drive it in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple of parts to that, right? So the first part is that, is the technology there? Yeah, probably not yet, right?
Yeah.
The second part is that when we think about sort of the educational literature and think about a little bit old school, but we think about, I think it was 2003, maybe. I read a paper that was published around that time, and it was getting the mix right. I think it was something like that, right? Which was Anderson, I want to say. Communities practice guide. Now, in that, it was there are learning interactions. So to have a high quality or meaningful learning experience, we want to have interactions between the learner and the teacher. We want to have interactions between the learner and the content, and we want to have interactions between learner and learner, so peer, social learning, and that kind of thing. And when we're talking about AI coaching, we're talking about that learner-teacher kind of interaction. And potentially we're going beyond that to the learner-manager, learner-mentor kind of, the Vygotskian, more knowledgeable other kind of area. And when we start to think about that, it's debatable whether or not the technology will ever really get us there. Because what we need is a kind of relationship between teacher and student, between mentor and mentee, between master and apprentice, or whatever it happens to be. We need that relationship to be able to provide that stretch, stretch goals and making sure that people can go and fulfill their potential. And that's ever so slightly different from having an information delivery bot, which allows you to scrape the internet and, find out all of the things at the click of a button in the palm of your hand that you probably couldn't find out very easily in the old days. So I think there's a mix of that, the educational paradigm, and there's also a little bit around what actually is AI in the marketplace. I don't mean what is AI as a functional technology, but in the marketplace you have this mix of AI as a functional technology. I can buy a SaaS product and it has AI in it. And you have AI as a marketing tool. So I've got a product, it's got AI in it. Please buy my product because it's got AI in it, even though maybe it doesn't. And then the third aspect of this is the kind of, I want to do organizational development and potentially outsource or restructure, or whatever the terminology we're using these days is, for reducing headcount. And I want a reason for doing that. If I'm a CEO of a business, and you see this all the time, we've seen this throughout 24, we've seen this across many businesses, that for some reason we need to reduce headcount. And sometimes AI can be the excuse, even if it's not the reality. And that kind of puts into question this idea of, is the tech ready? Does the tech need to be ready for businesses to make a structural change? Whether it's right or wrong, I'm not commenting on that, but it's a reality that happens, right? So it's complex, no?
Very complex. And as you're talking through that, I immediately started thinking about the self-determination theory and how there's this interplay of needing connectedness and autonomy at the same time for things, right? So same premise that you have to have a combination of both. So being able to be connected to your community, to people, to peers, to colleagues, to help you actualize what do these things mean for me and how do I move them forward so that you are then comfortable with using them and adopting them. But at the same time, the autonomy part comes in, which I think ties in as of right now, right? There's so much more to learn about AI with AI. So that's going to help drive, at least currently, a lot of that autonomy, using that as a tool to get information to make sense out of things in a safe place that maybe you don't have to interact with that peer right away. So that when you come back to being connected, you have this combination of the two things that help support each other. We're in a very interesting time. I'll just keep adding to that, right? We're still learning the best
Yeah.
ways to leverage this as you're highlighting, right? And also agree, it's being used, AI in particular, is being looked at as a way to be more efficient. Maybe it's right, maybe it's not. I think it's all in how we continue to look at it as a tool. And if we look at least current state, the combination of what we're talking through, yes, we need to use it, but can't be left alone just yet. Well, we'll see how it continues to evolve. So maybe in a year from now, maybe we keep doing this podcast and coming back to this thought and seeing where we're at, current state versus past state, which we is current state.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how it all evolves.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, let's talk about the next part of the model, which is like tech and data, right? So if you're implementing AI, of course, you need some AI to implement. It seems kind of obvious, right?
Makes sense.
But
yeah.
Yeah. So with what you were just saying, though, this idea of like AI is kind of everywhere, and it has been for a long time. And in the typical sort of HR or L&D paradigm, you would say you have content, you have systems, and learners interact with content on a system, and that interaction itself produces some data. So we have these kinds of parameters to play with. And it's kind of a web paradigm because we would say, well, we're going to produce some files, and those files are going to be in some kind of digital format, and we're going to have a SaaS system, but it's effectively providing access to media files. Within that, we might have some kind of fairly explainable AI functionalities. Things like recommender systems, things like search systems, for example. And that's basically been the paradigm of platforms, learning platforms, for quite a long time. It's some kind of functionality in HR systems as well. Particularly around the skills area, for example, matching people to jobs and matching skills to roles and things like that. In the Gen AI space, generative AI, which is the paradigm of the last couple of years, being able to make content, text, videos, audio, etc. Everything's ever so slightly different because now we have something it's provoking the thought around what we were just talking about, which is the displacement of knowledge workers this time. So it's not really, it's not affecting the manufacturing side of things much yet, but it takes us down this journey of, well, how evolved is the tech really? How can we use the tech really? And how much, to your point, how much is this going to change over? And if you think back over the last couple of years, we saw disruption in 22, we saw some incremental disruption in 23, but it was about adoption scale rather than the tech moving, very, very quickly. And now what we're seeing is it's not plateauing as such, but we're getting some stability in the market around convergence and divergence. So can you see that trend continuing, or do you think it's going to stabilize a little bit and we do the Gartner trough of disillusionment and we start to do some work? Where do you think we are in that space?
I mean, we'll see. We'll break out a mirror wall right now and try to see if we can predict this. I do actually think we're going to hit a trough and it's going to come back up. Just based on conversations that I think both of us are having all the time right now, is there still fear and anxiety around this? And also people trying to figure out what is the best way to take advantage of AI, particularly Gen AI. When I think about the learning space, as you were highlighting, there's this big push right now to leverage Gen AI to help create content. It just seems to be a natural fit. It seems to make sense. Let's cut down a bunch of time. Because surely, like when you look at the traditional way prior to having all of these Gen AI tools, content development was extremely taxing. It takes a lot of time to write. It takes a lot of time with your subject matter experts to get the knowledge out of their brains into the paper. Then you go through this long process. We all know Addie and going through that process or waterfall or whatever you follow at this point. Gen AI does have some potential with that. So again, there's some fear, there's some anxiety, there's some people trying things out, trying to figure out what makes the most sense. And then when you take that out of just the content development space and you look at what does this mean for educators in general? How do I best take advantage of this? So if I am a teacher and I already don't have enough time in my day, I'm excited about Gen AI because it could save me time. And I need time back because I already work more than I get paid for. So live that, right? Like we know how that works. So how do I take advantage of it? Well, I don't know how much time it's going to save you. Sure, it can save you some time around maybe lesson planning and things like that. But then how do I, on the flip side of that, get my learners to take advantage of it? How do I give them the experience, the exposure? Because they're going to need it too. So it's not just a tool for me as an educator or as someone in L&D. You have to think about, I need to also prepare my learners, my participants that are going through my workshops, whatever level you're in, if it's corporate, if it's manufacturing floor, if it's secondary teacher, university level teacher. How do I prepare my students to then also think about this from two lenses? It's from leveraging Gen AI and also thinking about it from that context perspective. Back to your original question, I think we are going to go through a little bit of a trough. It may not be extreme, but I think it's going to continue to happen as we're working through some of these fears that people have, working through what is the best way to take advantage of this. And obviously there's a ton of people experimenting in this space and taking advantage of it right now. They're learning as they go. There's some failures and some changes that need to have, lessons learned that they're having to pivot and adjust as they go. And then once a lot of those early adopters get through that, they can share that out with people and then get more people on board. So I do see a dip and then it coming back up. I think it has so much potential for it not to.
Yeah, I think so. It does have potential. What I've seen up to this point, what I've seen in throughout 24 really, and I don't know if this will change in 25, is that the primary driver for doing this is cost. So we're saying our learning programs used to cost this big, and now we want them to cost this much. Or our time to reach our learners with something that was finished was this long, and now we want it to be this long. And what I'm not seeing a conversation around is the other way around, to say, well, it used to take this long. It used to take, let's say, 6 weeks, and whatever, something nebulous used to take 6 weeks. And now we can do it in 2. But how about we use the tools, technologies, and skills that allow us to do it in 2? We still take 6, but we make it the richest, most wild and meaningful experience that these folks have ever seen. So that's using the same time and resource, slightly different tool set, to change the outcome and change the experience. And I don't think I've had that discussion with anybody. So part of my mind, the way my mind works is I'm thinking that it's just going to keep being a cost consideration. But I'd like to start to see some of these mind-blowing experiences that we probably could create with some of the tools that are out there. What do you think?